Hey everybody, and welcome to another deep dive with us. Today we are looking at Pembroke Pines, Florida. And oh my gosh, it looks like somebody's been doing their research. We have links for schools, parks, all sorts of great stuff for families. Looks like a lot, but we're going to break it all down. So stick with us and you will know everything you need to know about Pembroke Pines.
You got it. Choosing a place to live with your family. That's a big decision. And of course, schools and all that fun stuff is definitely at the top of the list. So let's see what Pembroke Pines has to offer.
Absolutely. All right, let's jump right in. First up, public schools. You got Pembroke Pines Charter High School, Silver Lakes Elementary, and Charles W. Flanagan High School.
Yeah.
College prep, a supportive early learning environment, and a massive high school with tons of choices. Wow. What stands out to you about these schools?
Yeah. It's interesting because it seems like there's something for everyone. We've got Pembroke Pines Charter High School really focused on college prep. So if you got a kid who's really looking to get into a good college, that seems like a really good option. Silver Lakes Elementary, they're really emphasizing that nurturing environment. Those early years are so important. You want them to feel supported and loved. And then Flanagan High School being so large, I mean, think about it. That probably means specialized programs, diverse student body, which, could be a real plus. But of course, bigger school has got its own pros and cons. What are your initial thoughts on that?
Well, and it's interesting you say supportive early learning environment. I mean, what does that really mean? Does that mean smaller class sizes, engaged teachers? Like, what makes it supportive?
Right. We need the specifics there. It's easy to say supportive, but what does that actually look like in action?
Mhm.
But luckily we have the chart here. It looks like they've got a low student to teacher ratio, dedicated reading specialists, and a big emphasis on social emotional learning. So I think that hits all the points there.
That is great. And for families considering maybe private education, we've got the Sagemont School, which goes from pre-K to high school. To talk about convenient. And Pembroke Pines Montessori Academy. What kind of insights can we glean about these private options?
Yeah, I mean, that pre-K to 12th grade at Sagemont, that's a huge plus for families. I mean, think about that consistency, long-term educational continuity. Send your kid there from the beginning all the way to the end. That's got to foster a strong sense of community. And then as for the Montessori Academy, it's really known for that individual learning approach. And that's something that a lot of families really look for. Hands-on activities, self-directed learning, and then mixed-age classrooms.
That is super cool that you could literally send your kids to the same school for their entire, academic journey. That's pretty neat.
It is pretty neat, yeah. And, you were talking about public versus private. And when we look at this chart here, it's interesting because public schools, they seem to offer, that broader range of extracurricular activities, sports programs. But private schools, they often boast smaller class sizes and those more specialized curriculums. So I guess it depends what your priorities are as a family.
For sure. Okay, so let's move beyond academics for a sec. What about keeping those kids active? Weston YMCA, Pembroke Pines Parks and Rec Department offers a ton of youth sports, soccer, baseball, basketball, swimming. Looks like they've got every sport covered.
Every sport is covered, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a real win for families. Studies actually show that access to organized sports, not only does it benefit the kids physically, but it helps them develop those social teamwork resilience. So it's really an investment in their well-being.
Yeah. Absolutely. Now, I'm also seeing a lot of information here about things to do with kids.
Yeah.
Weston Town Center for outdoor shopping events, C.B. Smith Park with its water park A&D fishing. Is it just me, or is Pembroke Pines hitting that sweet spot of offering like both excitement and relaxation?
You're right on. Yeah, that blend is so important for families, right? You got to have those options for both structured activities and just chilling out in nature, keeps everybody happy. So no wonder families are flocking to Pembroke Pines.
Speaking of flocking, it looks like this even includes details about a local real estate professional who specializes in helping families find their perfect spot in Pembroke Pines. Talk about a valuable resource.
Totally. Choosing the right real estate agent can make all the difference, especially in a competitive market like this one.
Okay, before we move on to the delicious food options in Pembroke Pines, and trust me, there are a lot, why don't we take a deeper dive into those charts comparing the public and private schools? I'm particularly interested in seeing how they stack up in terms of academic performance and extracurricular activities.
Absolutely. Let's get into it. Okay, so let's take a look at this first chart here. This one is comparing the average test scores of public and private schools in Pembroke Pines. It's really interesting to see how they stack up against both the state and national averages.
Oh, this is juicy. I love a good chart deep dive. What trends are you seeing?
Well, it looks like both the public and private schools in Pembroke Pines, they seem to be outperforming those state averages in key subjects like math and reading. which is a really good sign for families who are looking for, that high quality education. But it's worth pointing out that some of the private schools, they're consistently scoring higher than their public counterparts,
Mm.
especially in standardized tests. And this could be due to a variety of factors, smaller class sizes, maybe more rigorous curriculums, greater emphasis on test prep.
Yeah, it makes sense. They often have more resources and
Yeah.
more flexibility to kind of tailor that instruction. But let's not discount the incredible work being done in those public schools. Outperforming state averages is no small feat.
For sure. And remember, test scores are just one piece of the puzzle. Let's move on to this next chart. This one breaks down the extracurricular offerings at the schools.
Okay, bring on the extracurricular extravaganza. I'm all about those after-school activities. Keep the kids engaged and learning outside the classroom.
Well, prepare to be impressed. This chart is color-coded to show the variety of activities offered at each school. Look at Flanagan High School, for example. They've got a rainbow of options. From sports teams and debate clubs to robotics and performing arts. It's like a buffet of extracurricular enrichment.
Wow, Flanagan really does have it all. And I'm seeing a pretty impressive selection at the private schools, too. Sagemont, in particular, seems to have a strong focus on the arts.
They do,
Yeah.
which, aligns with what we were saying earlier about the private schools having those more specialized curriculums. So it seems like Sagemont has really carved out a niche as a school that really nurtures that artistic talent. Now, shifting gears a bit, let's take a look at this chart. That's comparing community resources.
Real community time. It's not all about the academics and the extracurriculars. We need those parks, libraries, community centers, places where families can connect. Kids can just be kids.
Right, exactly. This chart highlights the density of those community resources in different areas of Pembroke Pines. And what's so fascinating is that the areas with the highest concentration of schools, they also tend to have the most parks, libraries, community centers. It's almost as if they intentionally design these neighborhoods with families in mind.
That makes a lot of sense. Creating those walkable, family-friendly communities.
Yeah. Which brings us back to the importance of choosing the right real estate agent. Someone who really understands those nuances of these different neighborhoods and can help you find the perfect fit for your family.
You're reading my mind. And speaking of which, we keep mentioning this amazing real estate resource in Pembroke Pines. Can you remind our listeners who they should connect with if they're serious about exploring this area?
Absolutely. It's Antonio Ortega, LLC. He's a local expert, specializes in helping families find those dream homes in Pembroke Pines. And he's got a fantastic deal right now.
Ooh, tell me more about this deal.
Well, you'll have to go to his website, AntonioOrtegaLSE.com, for all the details. But let's just say it involves some serious savings on closing costs. Whether you're buying or selling, it's a win-win.
Wow, that's incredible. So listener, if you're at all intrigued by what you're hearing about Pembroke Pines, head over to AntonioOrtegaLLC.com and connect with Antonio. He'll be your trusted guide through the whole process.
Now let's dive back into these charts. This next one's pretty interesting. It shows the median home prices in different neighborhoods in Pembroke Pines over the past 5 years.
Ooh, housing market insights. Everybody loves a good real estate deep dive.
Yeah.
What trends are we seeing?
Well, one thing is clear. Pembroke Pines is a desirable place to live. Those median home prices have been steadily increasing over the past 5 years, indicating a really strong and stable real estate market. But there are some variations within the city. So neighborhoods that are closer to those top-rated schools and community resources that we were talking about, they tend to command higher prices.
It's all about location, location, location.
Right.
But that's where having a savvy real estate agent like Antonio comes in. He can help you navigate those price variations and find that sweet spot that balances your budget with your desire for that family-friendly neighborhood.
Exactly. Now, before we wrap up our deep dive on Pembroke Pines, let's shift gears one last time and talk about something that often gets overlooked: community events.
Ooh, I love a good community event. They're the heart and soul of a town. What kind of events are we talking about here? Farmers markets, concerts, and the park holiday parades?
You nailed it. This chart highlights the annual events calendar for Pembroke Pines. And it's jam-packed with family-friendly fun. They've got everything from the Pembroke Pines Art Festival, which showcases local artists and musicians, to the Taste of Pembroke Pines, where you can sample all those culinary delights from all over the city.
Okay, this is officially making me want to pack my bags and move to Pembroke Pines. They've got the schools, the parks, the community events, and a thriving food scene. What's not to love?
It's a pretty compelling package. And remember, Antonio Ortega, LLC, he's your go-to resource for all things Pembroke Pines. He can help you find the perfect home, connect you with the community, and make that transition to this vibrant city as smooth as possible.
All right, so let's wrap things up here with Pembroke Pines. But before we do, let's talk about something that's super important for families, and that is cost of living. How does Pembroke Pines stack up against other cities in Florida and the national average? Because let's be real, we can't just fall in love with a place without
Huh.
considering those practicalities, right?
Right. It's all about finding that sweet spot between, following your heart, but also being smart with your wallet. Luckily, it seems like Pembroke Pines offers a pretty affordable cost of living,
Right.
especially when you compare it to some of those like bigger, more metropolitan areas in Florida. Housing costs in particular seem to be quite reasonable,
Hmm.
which is a huge plus for families.
That's great to hear. It's always a trade-off. You want that kind of peace and quiet of the suburbs versus that hustle and bustle of the city. But of course, with the city comes those higher prices. So if you can get that suburban vibe without breaking the bank, that's a win-win.
Absolutely. And that's where a good real estate agent can really come in handy. They can help you navigate the market and find a home that really fits your budget and your family's needs. They can point you in the right direction
Uh,
towards those hidden gem neighborhoods that offer the best value.
Speaking of hidden gems, one of the charts that you sent highlights the demographic breakdown of Pembroke Pines. What can we learn from that data?
Yeah, it's really interesting because it seems like Pembroke Pines is a true melting pot of cultures with a significant Hispanic population, a growing Asian community, and a mix of other ethnicities as well. So that diversity is reflected in the city's schools, restaurants, community events. It really seems like a place where families from all backgrounds can feel welcome.
That's so important. Diversity, especially for kids.
Mm.
Growing up in an environment where they're exposed to different cultures and perspectives, it just really broadens their horizons.
Couldn't agree more. Now, before we wrap up completely, let's touch on one final chart. Transportation. How easy is it to get around Pembroke Pines?
Oh, this is key, especially for families who rely on cars, public transportation, maybe even bikes and scooters to get around. What are we seeing in terms of transportation options?
Well, it seems like Pembroke Pines has got a pretty well-developed road network, makes it easy to get around by car. They've also got a public bus system that connects to surrounding areas, and for those who prefer a more active mode of transportation, there are those dedicated bike paths and sidewalks throughout the city.
That's fantastic. Sounds like they've really thought about providing options for everybody.
Exactly. And that brings us back to Antonio Ortega, LLC. He's the perfect person to connect with if you're really serious about Pembroke Pines. He really understands the ins and outs of the city, from those diverse neighborhoods to transportation options. And don't forget about that incredible offer, significant savings on closing costs.
Right. Head over to AntonioOrtegaLLC.com for all the details. So as we wrap up this deep dive into Pembroke Pines, what's the biggest takeaway?
I think the biggest takeaway is that Pembroke Pines really seems to offer that winning combination of factors that families are looking for. You've got those strong schools, those abundant community resources, a really vibrant social scene, and a relatively affordable cost of living. So it seems like a place where families can thrive.
Well said. All right, listeners, we've reached the end of our Pembroke Pines adventure. We hope you feel empowered to continue your exploration and make those informed decisions about your future. And remember, if you're ready to take the plunge, connect with Antonio Ortega, LLC. He is your trusted guide to all things Pembroke Pines.
Happy house hunting. And until next time, keep those curiosity fires burning.